your Zoom. That's why I couldn't pause it. Shoot.
Yeah.
I know, I know. I'll do this.
Yeah, just. Yeah.
Good evening. I am County Commissioner Irvin, and I am calling this meeting to order at 6:30 p.m. on Wednesday, November 6th. Nick, would you please help us with our roll call?
Sure. Commissioner Reynolds,
Here.
Commissioner Kendall,
Here.
Commissioner Irvine,
Here.
Commissioner Eder,
Here.
Chair Ian Quorum.
Wonderful, thank you. All right, we are going to open up the public hearing for the Saulsbury conditional use and site plan review request for outdoor RV storage, file number CU 24-1 and SP 24-3. This is a quasi judicial hearing, so I get to read this fine statement. This is the time and place set for a hearing on planning file number CU 24-1 and SP 24-3. The hearing is now called to order. The hearing will proceed as follows. Staff will present the staff report. The applicant will present its application and supporting evidence. Any interested persons will then be provided the opportunity to present testimony or evidence in support that is neutral or that is in opposition. The applicant, as the party bearing the burden of proof, will then be afforded an opportunity to present rebuttal testimony. Then staff will provide closing comments. Any party may request that the written record remain open to respond to testimony presented at the hearing. At the conclusion of this hearing, the Planning Commission may close the public hearing and deliberate towards a decision, close the public hearing and defer deliberations towards a decision at a date and time certain, or continue the public hearing at a time and date certain. All testimony, argument, and evidence must be directed to the applicable criteria or any other approval criteria you believe to be applicable. Matters unrelated to the application are not pertinent to the Planning Commission's decision in these proceedings. Failure on the part of any person to raise an issue that is not specific enough to afford the Planning Commission and parties to this proceeding an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes appeal to the City Council and Land Use Board of Appeals on that issue. Failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to conditions of approval with sufficient relevance to allow the local government or its designee to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Commissioners must disclose any ex parte contacts, site visits, biases, or conflicts of interest. Does any commissioner have anything to disclose? And if so, please state the nature and whether you intend to participate in these proceedings. Commissioner Reynolds?
Yes, I do. I have to disclose. I spoke to, well, outside of staff, I spoke to Katrina Fland over at the assessor's office regarding the maps for this upcoming annexation. Sarah at the county planning office. This was all done on Friday. And then Craig Graham also over at the assessor's office regarding the maps, and so I want to disclose that I contacted them regarding this annexation, regarding the mapping, regarding right of way, and actually received a response back from Craig Graham regarding a piece of right of way. I also spoke to Jim McDonald and his father tonight. They asked a couple questions and I answered those. And I just want to get that out in the open. I have been asking questions, trying to do research on this matter and take it very seriously, and just looking to find out all the information that's available. And I think is that good?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Commissioners or do any of the commissioners or people in the audience want to challenge that?
The challenge would be, his objectivity in the matter.
Correct.
Whether he's, can remain unbiased.
I believe I can remain unbiased. But we'll see.
Okay,
To be 100% clear, the audience, this is now your time. If you have an objection or concern, this would be the time to raise that.
just for my own purposes, Nick, in the future, if a commissioner has a concern, what would be a better way to do that without possibly having this conflict of interest?
Well, it's not necessarily a conflict of interest. The issue here is that you're holding a quasi judicial hearing. It's a court-like proceeding. And we want to make sure that all of the information that you're considering and that the public has that same level of access to that information as well, so that everyone understands the criteria by which the decision will be made, the evidence in the record, and then ultimately your decision or weighing of that evidence against the criteria. In the future, if commissioners have questions regarding an application, it's advised that they contact staff. If they are not getting the information they request, then one, they can ideally go to the public hearing and request that formally during the public proceeding. If it's not provided, then you can also contact the city administrator or the city attorney. I can't imagine that that would even be needed. But the idea here is it's entirely okay for staff to support the planning commissioners and ask questions directly about the application on a one-on-one basis. It's not okay for staff to hold a meeting with two of you and answer questions. We have to do it on a one-on-one basis. The point here is we can support you through email, phone, answer questions, provide information, so that you're prepared to conduct the hearing and make a decision. Ideally, all that information comes out in the public hearing, though, so everyone, including the applicant and any parties of the record, have that same information. So we all have the same information for which the decision is based.
I have a question regarding that. So the information that Commissioner got from the different departments regarding mapping and insurance and whatnot, is that going to be provided as part of the visit in here, or is that something you can all be privy to?
Very good point. Ideally, yes, I think the staff report will cover it. The findings and the record includes generally that information. The public works director is here to speak about the right of way. I can answer questions about the subject property with respect to the annexation. So all that information will be publicly available.
One additional question, in the future, if I wanted to do more research, could I give you the research that I want? And then have the city manager get those pieces of information for me, and then would it be part of the record that everybody can avail to?
You can always ask city staff. Ideally, you would ask me because I'm a direct support staff member to the planning commission. But if I'm not available, certainly the associate planner or public works director, any of our city staff. It's when you go outside of city staff that we have a problem. Okay.
So
And yes,
we could go to you and say, we need more map, we love to know about.
yes. Ideally, you would say, I have a concern. I would like to see a map of this property. I would like to see on that map perhaps the city limits. I would like to see a map of the public right of way. I would like to see a map of any easements. You know, whatever those questions are, that staff assemble that information and then present it for you. Because your high salary is a big fat zero in volunteers, remember, we're here to serve you. So ask the questions, we can assemble the information and then present that in the public hearing.
Let you do the legwork.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do you have anything to disclose?
I have no conflicts or disclosure.
I have a question. Is it a concern with?
Please come up to the lectern.
They should already be turned on. If you wouldn't mind stating your name too and your address.
My name is Shelley Nunez. 6238 Southwest Pine over.
Okay,
My question is, if there were questions addressed to you about the property and the proceedings, and it was about proceedings tonight, or just the property, or just general questions, should those not have been held off to be presented in this forum?
Right.
But they, so it's, so rather than conveying that, you went ahead and discussed it, is that correct?
Okay, so.
Please turn
can you
your
turn
mic.
your mic on?
I'm just trying to clarify, like, if there were questions or concerns brought up, I thought that that's what this forum was for. And so to do that outside of this, it just doesn't seem quite right.
Correct.
Does that make sense?
It,
Yeah.
it does, and what I was trying to find out was clarification, when I was reading through the packet. Can I, is this okay?
Yes,
Okay, all right, as far as when I was reading through the packet. What I wanted clarification on was basically Merit Lane. And how that is designated by either the city or the county or as right of way. And when I asked staff. How. Let me see, I think I have the email still. I asked, I believe I asked you, Nick. Yeah. Where's the.
I think more what I'm referring to is the conversation with our neighbors with, and no, but not that I'm anticipating it being. But that, again, that this is the forum to bring up those kind of concerns. From the community.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes, I did,
Okay.
yes.
So will those questions be addressed in this public forum?
Yes,
Same.
so
yes,
So,
Commissioner Reynolds, if you're able to, I would encourage you to maybe expand upon your conversation with the adjacent property owner. What the questions or discussion entail. Because I don't think it's clear for her that she understands what that discussion.
sure, and it goes back to Merit Lane. How is Merit Lane designated as right of way? And what I was told is a private driveway.
all apparently.
No, private driveway starting at their property,
Oh, I see.
yes. Yeah, and the rest was, okay, up in that, when I talked to Nick, what was Merit Lane up until it hits their property. And what we discussed was. Next question. Was, it's in an email stream. Nick, do you have that email?
The email that I sent you,
The email that I sent you, well, yeah, that he replied to.
So I think the question is what the conversation was with the neighbors, because that has not been disclosed.
Right, and why that wasn't held off until this setting.
Cause I didn't know better, basically. Yeah. And now I know, I have to ask staff for everything. So that's why they get the big money and we're up here volunteering.
No, I appreciate volunteering. It just feels like if it's, I don't know, it would have been nice to everyone, for everyone to hear the discussion if it's regarding whatever it's right.
Yes.
Driveways or anything.
Yeah, so it was more clarification, because my understanding as far as annexation. Is that in order to be annexed into the city, you need to be. Adjacent to or next to city property. Basically, so. There has to be a piece of your property that has to be next to city property. And that was where my my question about Merritt Lane came up, is. Is Merritt Lane? A public right of way? If it is a public right of way, the city own it, does county own it? Okay, or is it private property? And that is where this rabbit hole started, and going down the rabbit hole of finding out where Merritt Lane was. Like. City, county, and private. And that's where I went to the assessor and it's like, so Merritt Lane, what is it? And nobody really had an answer. So
So
I
it's
just,
still.
I just kept, yeah, well, kinda, so. I think we'll find out in the meeting tonight, because I sent off what I had gotten from the county. To Nick. And Public Works Director. And. That's where we're at.
What they're- most of the conversation.
No, the conversations weren't, as far as with the county staff and stuff was in person, I went into, yeah, it was, yeah, just. In person, no, it was in person. Yeah. So, yeah, it was just right here.
So if anyone would like to challenge, for, Reynolds' ability to, be unbiased, you can assert that.
Is that at any time?
No, it needs to happen now.
It has to
So
happen
we
now,
have, it would
okay,
be to happen now. So I think I myself would feel better if I challenged that. Because I do think that having a conversation, especially outside of group, while it was an accident. I don't want it to weigh on the proceedings. I don't think that it has been made expressively clear what the conversation with the neighbors was at this point. So I know it was an accident that happened,
I mean,
but
I did it on purpose, but I didn't know I was,
yeah,
yeah,
exactly, that's what I mean.
yeah.
I myself would feel better about moving forward if we did not have that weighing over us. So I think that I don't know what the procedure would be, if that means that you can't vote or what happens there.
Well, ultimately, the planning commission needs to determine whether he can, if there's an objection, then, Mr. Reynolds needs to, either affirm that he can remain impartial and unbiased, or he needs to recuse himself. If this were a planning commissioner training, I would say, when in doubt, sit it out. Right? So this is something for you as a commission to determine if you still have concerns about his, extent that he's biased, and impartial, and, voice that, and then Mr. Reynolds needs to respond to that, whether he can remain impartial, unbiased, or if, he will recuse himself from the proceeding.
Any other commissioner have anything to say? I feel bad putting anyone on the spot. Not my nature. But I guess, Commissioner Reynolds, I would ask if you would recuse yourself from the vote this evening.
But okay, I understand why, as far as there. I can remain unbiased, but because of the integrity of the committee, I will recuse myself from the vote. Am I still allowed to ask questions?
No,
Yeah,
you're not to participate in the proceedings,
okay,
which includes, discussion amongst, any testimony, anyone providing testimony, and of course deliberations.
Any other commissioners have comment? Is this something we vote on, or is it just one person raises an objection?
Mr. Reynolds needs to make the determination himself.
Okay,
yeah. Well, I have to. This is tough, because. It's not tough, I mean, I do know I can remain unbiased, but because of the integrity of this, I'm taking myself out of this, I'm recusing myself, I make the motion to recuse myself from, this,
Just
Yeah.
need to say the proceedings.
basically, this proceeding.
Yes,
And. Yeah, I'm sorry. Now I know, now I don't know.
Yeah, I'm sorry as well.
That's okay.
But I, just wanna make sure that we're being completely above board
Oh, yeah.
on these decisions, so. I appreciate that.
Okay, and. Thank you for your time. Okay,
Okay, and I don't think we got to.
This is Commissioner Etter and I have nothing to disclose on this matter.
Okay, thank you. Just for the record, the 3 meetings in a row have definitely been not normal, so thank you for being patient with us as we kind of go through some of these little hiccups on here. Okay, so now staff will deliver the staff report.
great, thank you. So we have a proposal for a site plan and conditional use. We've met with Saulsbury's on a number of occasions. They would like to receive approval from the planning commission, in particular conditional use. It also requires site plan review. A site plan review is what we call a type 2 administrative decision. That would be a decision that the director would normally issue, but the conditional use is a type 3. It requires planning commission review and a quasi judicial hearing. So we've elevated both decisions to the planning commission. And so that is the proceeding here. I do want to point out that the subject property is tax lot 1800 as shown in the map and identified in the staff report on assessors map 11-13-14D. That property is directly adjacent to the existing city limits. The Saulsburys have also signed a consent to annexation with a 1-year waiver on that, meaning that under the statute of ORS chapter 222, there's a provision that consent to annexations are only valid for 1 year unless expressly waived by the property owner, and the consent to annexation that they signed includes that. So it's for this reason that you're actually not deciding on annexation. And when staff works on projects like this, where it's a single property that's directly adjacent to the city limits and it requires planning approval, and under some very kind of rare, unique circumstances, we consider the property annexed when they sign the consent to annexation with the 1-year waiver. Okay, so that's generally the request this evening. I want to back up for the commission and those this evening to 2014. It was at a time when the Jefferson County Economic Development Manager, Janet Brown at the time, had identified a sincere concern for lack of industrial land in the city. There was concern that we were not able to attract and respond to business development leads through economic development of Central Oregon or business Oregon, meaning we didn't have the land or certain types of land that would be suitable for people wanting to start a business or expand their business to matters. After some time, we discussed this and decided it was time for the city to update our statewide planning goal 9 economic development element in our comprehensive plan. And in that economic development component of our plan, there's the economic opportunities analysis. This is the factual basis for the study that considers the city's land supply, population growth, the amount of development in our commercial and industrial lands, number of jobs per acre, so on and so forth, and determines whether we have an adequate supply for a 20-year land need for employment land, that being commercial and industrial, or otherwise. And that 2018 EOA concluded that we had a suitable 20-year land supply, meaning we could not justify an urban growth boundary expansion. So going back a couple weeks ago, when you consider urban growth boundary expansion, there had to be a justified need for it, and that was The regional large lot industrial said there was a need for it and you could go find the site. Back in 2018, we didn't have a justification for that. So after spending $60,000 on consultants and a lot of time and public input, we decided to rezone all the city's land that was zoned C1 from Fairgrounds South all the way down to Colfax. And we rezoned it mixed use employment. And that mixed use employment zone included all the C1 zone permitted and conditional uses and those not permitted in the zone, and then added the light industrial uses. At the same time, we recognized there was adjacent to the city limits, but within the urban growth boundary, Jefferson County had county commercial land. It was zoned that. And we wanted to make annexation of these lands a lot easier. And in particular, we wanted to have, there was a concern for city mixed use employment and then county commercial permitted uses not being clear, understand which one applies, or how come I can do this use here and not there. So we then decided, why don't we adopt a county mixed use employment zone? It basically is the same permitted uses as the city's mixed use employment zone. The only difference is any development that requires a sewer is required to annex. So if you're going to build a building, or in some cases, you know, there was a Fred Meyer, oh, well, Fred Meyer's gonna have to look up the sewer and they need to annex. But if it was something not requiring sewer, you would have the same permitted uses. This in turn created a lot easier path forward regarding the transportation planning rule, which when you annex land or change the zoning of land, you have to analyze whether the transportation system is adequate to accommodate the proposed zone change, annexation, or resulting development. And if it's not, there needs to be mitigation. So we did that work ahead of time. We determined that the transportation system generally at that point in time was adequate. And we established both the mixed use employment zone on the county's zoning map and in their zoning regulations, as well as the city's zoning map and zoning regulations. This is important because when we look at why are we relying upon consent to annexation, it's because one, we want land within the city from a zoning and control perspective. It makes a lot of sense. This is an area where you're going to start to see more pressure for development, and when land is within the city limits, it's a lot easier here. I think what you're going to see here this evening is that the infrastructure does matter. And you know, having the ability to have right of way or improved streets and things like that does matter. So that brings us to the point of the actual staff report, the criteria. I did have a conversation with the city attorney and the public works director today. After some questions were asked, it appears that staff has inappropriately applied our criteria. Because the property has not formally been annexed, we need to actually apply the county's mixed use employment zone approval criteria. So what does that mean for the commission this evening? What I think that means for you this evening is you proceed through your public hearing, you accept public comments, you don't deliberate, you continue this public hearing to a date time certain. Ideally, that looks to be probably next week, or probably not the 13th, but the week thereafter. Staff will then revise the decision for the findings and make findings of compliance, of course, on a factual basis with the county criteria. We will then present that at the date of the continued hearing. It will be available for the applicant and all the public. It'll be readily available 7 days in advance, like normal. So that said, that's where we're at this evening. The public works director is here. Should we have questions about Merritt Lane, the right of way, things like that? If you would like to just get out ahead of that and have that discussion now before we move on to testimony, that probably would be a good idea. Mr. Hurd could speak during the staff report, or if it comes up and you want to have that, you can have that discussed after public comments, and staff can provide some supplemental information there. Either way is just fine. Any questions before you proceed?
Commissioner Kendall. What is the largest benefit for annexing this? And why we wanting this annex. You may have said it's somewhere in the midst of that whole report, but can you hone it if there was?
Well, my initial thinking was that I wanted the ability to apply the city's development code,
The mixed use,
employment under the city code.
so it's the greatest benefit is to the city itself.
Well, the benefit is that we apply our criteria, which I know and understand.
Versus the county.
Yes. It's not that I don't know it, it's that I have a better understanding of it and how the criteria apply and so on and so forth.
So is it the city that's requesting the annexation or the owners of the land?
Guidance to the applicant was, please sign the consent to annexation. And we will, process the site plan and conditional use. They signed the consent to annexation. We did not demand it, we said it will make it a lot easier.
Because we had a request for conditional use on this property,
Correct.
and this was the city solution. Or one of the city solutions for that process.
Yes.
Got it, thank you.
Go.
So I'm just gonna ask if you would mind presenting that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, the benefit, to me, the benefit of coming to the city is that our code is more flexible for development, you know, because you're densified, change things, you do things a lot simpler than you do.
Who owns it?
Who owns what
The property?
property?
The applicant, the Saulsbury's.
Oh, it's all.
That's the benefit of coming. to the city.
And the Saulsbury's are coming, came to you for a certain development. I haven't had a chance to look at all the details.
Yeah, I've been working with the Saulsbury's for a number of years. They've been trying to find called a development scenario or a use that would, meet their needs. And I think they were looking for a use that, wouldn't require a large amount of capital. But also put that property into, economic use, for their family.
Okay, yeah. Perfect. Good reason why you know that, of course. Okay, thank you.
Jeff, would you mind walking us through some of the right of way issues that have been kind of alluded to?
Yeah, so the question came up is, you know, what is Merritt Lane across tax lot 1800? When you look up on the screen and you look at the GIS map, when you're looking through GIS and whatnot, you can kind of tell what's right away because there's no tax lot number associated with it, and that's just the open area on the map, right? So when you stare at it, looking here, it looks like right away does not go through 1800 to tax lot 17. And in reality, it does. And what's I think messing everybody up is there was a partition plat that was done 2020, where tax lot 1800 was actually a lot larger. And they wanted to partition it down to a smaller lot. And as a condition of partitioning, they dedicated 30 feet of public right of way there, which you can't see on the tax lot map. But if you clicked identify and went to onto 1800, Nick, and you.
It's on 1800.
And you went to identify, go to detailed information. And then you go to files. And then down at the bottom, you'll see the plat that says 2020. If you download that and open it, it actually brings up the partition plat that is recorded. And it's, well, okay, try the other one. Try that one. There, that one. There it goes. So then you can see, they platted it, and up there right at the top, you zoom in, you'll see the 30 feet of right of way that was dedicated to public purposes of road. And so the thought process, if you go back to the GIS map, I can walk you through it. The thought process is, when folks develop, especially in a situation like this, where you have a tax lot to the north, that's 1400, and you got one to the south, but you can see how the lines kind of line up with the Merritt right away. I mean, the right of way there, it's kind of like a trapezoid shape that's really wide, and then it goes you know, at a steady width of like 50, 60 feet, and then as you get, if you scroll to the left. You can kind of see how it kind of jogs and narrows up really skinny there against TS&S, and then it goes and it flares out when it hits 97. So it's not a consistent right of way. So me, when I look at it, I go, okay, Merritt Lane, the right of way width is a mess. You know, our standard should be at this local road 55 feet, if it's collected 60, right? Well, in order to make that happen, typically what somebody say, if somebody came in here and subdivided all this. One property would give half, and the other property would give the other half, so that's how you subdivide, right? And you would center the road up to align with the existing road, so everything lines up. So at the time when the partition plat happened, we said, okay, here's gonna be the thought process. You're gonna give your 30, and the property to the north will give their 30 when they develop. Still leaves the issue of the 1100 and everything else to the west, but at least we're slowly gaining towards building the correct right of way width as America continues to develop as we go east to Adams. So that's what it was. So I think what was confusing everybody was they were saying, well, is it private or is it public? And I was like, well, Merritt is a private road past 1800, because once it hits higher, there's just a 30-foot easement across Jim's property, and that goes through. So from that point forward over to Adams, it is not public right of way. It is just private property, and there's a public access easement over it. So it's under no control of the city or the county. It's his easement. Whether that's easement is granted directly to the public, or if it's a private easement for his use only. I didn't go down into the details to find that out. I just knew it is an easement. But from that section back to the highway, it is public right of way. So then the question comes up as to whose control is it in? Because when you click on the city limits there, you can see, well, city limits comes down to the bottom of tax lot 1100 and then straight across, which means some of the right of ways in the city, some of it's in the county. And then you have the corner of 1100 abutting the corner of 1800. So then the question came up to me is, how can we annex somebody in if they're not contiguous to the city limits, because there's a right of way right there, right? And it doesn't show that. I don't have the answer to that one. I know Nick would understand that way better than I do.
It's expressly allowed under ORS 222.
Right, okay, so there you go. So it is allowed. But then the question came up, well, okay, if it's half in the city, half in the county can maintain it. Well, it's not expressly written anywhere, but in the county, they have the county roads and they have their local, this is expressly written. They have county roads and they have local access roads. The county road is deemed as a county road by the county, and they provide maintenance and upkeep on it. When they deem it a local access road, it's just public right of way, and they provide no maintenance whatsoever to a local access road. The reason why that was done back in the day is because before all these land use, land use planning came about, people were subdividing out in the county and they just wanted to build roads and they were going to take care of it. And the county is not designed to be like a city where we have mass density and we take roads like that. So that solution that happened in the legislature, whatever, was okay. Can have public right of way as a local access road, and counties are not required to maintain it if they so deem it to be that way. And so in the case of when they're a local access road, the county's not going to maintain it. But for us as a city, it functions more like it's serving a city population. Therefore, there's no transfer, anything happens, it's just in the city, it's public right of way, and we just take care of it because somebody needs to, it's not like a rural county local road serving one or two people. This is serving multiple. So we try to take care of it.
Commissioner Kendall, okay, just for clarification. Did I hear you say half of it is an easement and half of it is public right of way?
Yeah, if you're looking, Mary, up on the map, you can see tax lot 1700, which is Jim's property. So from that line, right, that cursor from that way over to Adams, the gravel road that everybody drives down, you're driving across the east. You're not driving within public right of way.
The one going up and down? or
Nope,
The one
east,
across
west.
Merritt?
Merit Lane itself.
Okay,
The actual gravel.
so what is our solution to not have it be split if this thing is annexed in? Is there a solution to then say, okay, we're gonna leave it as an easement, but the city's gonna take care of it, or we're gonna turn it into all public road? I don't know if you can turn a private easement into a public road unless you go to ring with the owner. Is there a solution?
So I think you're mixing up 1700 and 1800. So 1800, the tax lot we're talking about that they're developing. It does not show right away on this map. It's just not updated. It is truly public right away all up to 1700. So
All of 1800?
yes.
Oh,
So,
okay, well,
yes,
then there's no problem.
correct.
Okay,
Yes,
so why are we discussing private, public?
because there was a lot of confusion with the map. Everybody's looking at the map. You know, we're looking at this
Okay.
GIS map and we don't understand.
So lot 1700 is the one with the issues.
And it's not an issue. It's
Well,
just,
I mean, it's the one that's different.
yes, lots
And
of,
lot 1800 that we're addressing is the one with all public access.
correct.
And so we're good there.
Yes.
So unless they want to develop somewhere down the road, 1800, we don't have to address it tonight.
You don't have to request additional right of way. For them to do, as part of our standard, it's required that you develop your adjacent to provide access. Therefore, if you need to city standard, and city standard is, well, our right of way widths are this, here's our street standard, here's what you're supposed to do, right?
So we are supposed to develop the adjacent,
We are supposed to develop the adjacent,
the
However-
1700,
no, not 1700, 1800. We're only talking about
1800.
just
Okay,
1800. Yep. 1700 is not in the picture, it's
Okay.
just,
so we don't need
The
to
road
worry about
changes.
1700.
don't need to worry about something,
And 1800 is all public,
yes.
so we're good.
Mhm.
Confusion is clear.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. And that's just what started it all, and that's what created the conversation, because the map itself was conflicting because it's not updated with the actual petition map. That's all.
Talk to us about that. Make a new
Talk
map.
And, you know, to the Commissioner Reynolds' defense, I mean, these are good questions. Right? And so the only challenge is that it was discussed outside the meeting. So, but nonetheless, we've got the right of way adjacent to the subject property. So we've got that cleared out.
No, it was a great question, because it made me have to go, yeah, no, I know it's right away, and I looked at it like, why is it not showing right? That's a problem. So then it turned me to go dig more, ask questions, talk to the GIS, why haven't you updated the map? Oh, we haven't updated, we need to update it, okay. That's what's creating confusion, that's all it is.
Thank you.
Yeah, very well.
Does anyone have any other questions for Jeff? Great, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, staff, do you have anything else?
Do not.
We will call up the applicant testimony is next. Because the staff report kind of went through some of the rules, the high level stuff. Make sure that in your applicant testimony that you're talking about things that you would put in the application so that they're entered into the record. So specifics about the project itself, that's all we've talked about right now. Easements and roads, so.
You know, that RV storage use, let's talk about that.
Exactly, so if you wouldn't mind coming up and stating your name and everything for the record, for the applicant. Make sure you're talking into the mic. Thank
Can
you.
you hear me there? Okay, I'm Shelley Long, is Michelle Burns, and one of the owners of the property. So our intention is just to provide outdoor RV and boat storage. That's about it.
How many,
I've never had it.
how many?
We haven't plotted that out yet. That's a good question. We have not done that. We leveled the property, fenced it. There's a security fence. And that's as far as we've taken it at this point. It required quite a bit of groundwork because of the hillside and
How
such.
many?
1.3, I believe.
So do you guys want to just have RV and boat storage, or you actually want to have storage units?
We've not gone down to storage units, at this point.
So just the RV and the boat storage.
Just really simple.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's nothing fancy, it's not, I think I know, I've heard that since we've applied, it's been a long process for us. Back in the spring, this has been kind of drug out, 2 other RV and boat storage places have opened up in Madras, so that may, I don't know, may change our decision. Right now, that's what it would be, and of course, we know we'd have to come back and talk to you all if we changed the plan for it, but at this point, that's still where we are.
Thank you.
Is there, either the city or something that says you can only store this many, they have to be this many feet apart, or can you cram them in any way you want?
I'm not aware of any rules or regulations regarding how that's done.
The city code does not specify or require any of that. And I can almost guarantee the county code does not either.
Look at that, do that.
Well, promise we won't be cramming them in, won't make it look bad, you know, it's not our intention, yeah.
Can you talk us through a little bit about the fencing that you've already put up and whether or not the gate will be locked?
Yes, well, my brother-in-law did a good job, it's cyclone fencing with barbed wire top, that kind of thing, yes. And it's a coated security gate, solar, because there's no power to that property at this point.
Great, I saw on the application that no permanent structures are proposed there. There are no garbage facilities, anything like that are proposed to be there.
You said there's no electricity to the property?
No, the gates just. No utilities,
Okay, so
yeah, it's just solar powered gate.
people are gonna be parking their property, but there's no lights for. Just for storage. use.
Right. And we may down the road do again solar, but we would consider solar powered like dawn, dusk to dawn kind of thing. But we consider the neighbors, and if, we don't wanna make that a imposition or irritation to any, bother any neighbors with it. So as needed, I guess. But it's not in the works right now.
It also looks like in the findings and updates, that, no landscaping was proposed, for this property. It's the gravel is what would be there, the cyclone fencing, we already talked about, garbage. As far as entering and exiting the property, with trailers and things, did you do any site prep or, what was your process as far as reviewing the appropriateness of the entrance for that?
Well, we've used it, and they've been able to pull in our own equipment and trailers and things without, we are contemplating more gravel. As far as landscaping, that's a challenge without any utilities with no water. So that was not in the plan.
With regard to that question. Hopefully it would be successful, and you'd have lots of people who would want to rent a spot to restore. So you have more traffic, and you have more people pulling in and pulling out. Is that going to be an issue for Merritt Road? Because that's once you turn heading that way from 97, you can pick up speed a little bit. So
Between 97 and this lot. Is that what you're saying?
yeah. How far from 97? I mean, because these are people, that's usually the road heading towards Prineville, correct?
No, this road just runs into South Adams if you were.
Oh,
to
South
take it on.
Adams,
But
okay.
we would not use, because it's not. Which has been made clear in this proceeding, that the road from the, what would it be, east side of this lot we're discussing on. Would not be used for our property because it's not a public road.
Okay,
So we would just have to let our customers know you have to access from 97.
okay, so you're accessing from Merritt? that's the entrance into the property to
Yes.
bring the
Yes.
vehicle.
Yes,
Okay, but is it? I'm just a little concerned about, is the road busy
no,
road
it's
to where people are gonna be having a difficult time pulling in and out, and you have more big rigs, motorhomes, fifth wheels, etc. Going in and out, no,
I wouldn't anticipate that, if this is, I mean, it's not, it would be different if it was like a campground, right, where people were in and out a lot, but this is kind of pull it in, park it, and leave it for some time, and so I wouldn't anticipate a whole lot of traffic.
I don't feel in 1.3 acres that there's gonna be a lot of people doing this at once, you know, it's parking something and then and leaving. I just don't see that, and I don't feel like in 1.3 acres, you can cram that many RVs and boats even onto their property. I mean,
No,
do you guys
no.
have a kind of a number that,
We did, you guys remember,
I mean,
this project's been so done now.
50 is the most? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and this is really gonna just be, I think, a place for people to winterize their RVs and their boats and store them and.
Yeah,
And
Yes.
it's not gonna be where there's gonna be multiple people there at once trying to leave or come in. I
no.
don't see that happening.
And this has been in the works for a long time, I was trying to find something to do with this piece of property, it's
Yes.
originally when it was brought up years ago. Years ago now, that was, and I can't even remember, her name was Morgan, does that sound familiar, I mean, yes, and that it was kind of a great idea, like, yes.
It is.
Welcome for this, because the idea was that they would provide a service to, free up the streets in town, like the neighborhoods. You know, where sure, parking their RVs on the road or in their driveways or whatever, we didn't. Because it's been so drawn out, we didn't know we would have so much competition, but who knows, I mean, there may still be, we don't.
No, I think it's great. My business is right next to the storage unit up on Andrews Drive
Oh.
and. I drive down that road multiple times a day and there's not a lot of traffic with people pulling in and out. It's just, it's hit or miss. And so, and it's full. I've gone in there, it's full of boat storage and RV. So I think it's well needed in this town. for sure.
We were hopeful because we're on that south end, the one in Terrebonne recently closed, you know, the one that was right there on the highway, so it might even drop people off the highway, I don't know. Anyway, this is our plan.
Great. I did see as one of the conditions of approval that the city was requesting additional screening on the cyclone fence. Is that something that,
That we can, do. Yeah, we can put slats in.
Okay.
Yeah, we've already do slats in this, yeah.
okay. Do you have any other questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so after the applicant testimony, we moved to proponent testimony, which is anyone who wishes to speak in favor of the proposition. Is there any proponents? Is there anyone online? Do we have anyone with neutral testimony? Please state your name and your address.
Yeah, 12 Southwest Main Street. I have a question, on this, can we see the, actual city limits, the red line that shows the city limits on this GIS, is there a map that shows that, the tax map?
She,
I have this on.
it's shown there in the yellow on the screen.
Okay, can you zoom in on lot 1100?
Where's 1100 next? Yeah. More.
Okay, and how do you show the actual where the city limit line is?
As shown on the map. The legal description can be shown on the assessor's map, and then of course there's a legal description associated.
I think it's tax map 11-1314E. Is there any way to pull that up? There we go. Now zooming on lot 11. What is that? I know that's the city, I'm sorry, I know that's the city limits. I see the red. Is that in or out?
Tax law 1100
Yeah,
is in the city limits.
okay, because it goes around 1100, I mean. Doesn't that, is that, sorry, I'm just looking, that looks so confusing, can you clean that up?
No, I can't, that's the assessor's map.
That's the assessor's map, so,
I would advise if you have a specific question, ask it. It's likely this proceeding is gonna be continued to a date time certain, we can come back and answer it, but my experience tells me that. When you see that black dot, the red city limits line and the tax lot boundary all crossing. That means that the tax lot is in the city limits to the southeast corner. So the southeast corner of tax lot 1100 is in the city limits.
yes,
There's not, another way to say it is, there's not land in between the southeast corner of tax lot 1100 and the subject property. However, I will tell you, and I did share this exact statute with you in the email last week, that even if there were,
yeah,
as long as that's across right of way, it can still be annexed.
and the right of way, regardless of whether it's county, city, or private, can be,
That is correct.
so, okay. So then, regardless of it, so so I say this, regardless of whether it's a city, county, or private right of way, it can be used to annex.
Not private right, there's no such thing as private right of way.
Right.
Regardless of the entity who owns the public, or who has jurisdiction over the public right of way. Property across from that right of way can be
It could
annexed.
be state, it could be
Yes.
city, it could be federal,
Yes,
it doesn't matter.
correct.
Okay, and that's the point I'm looking at right there is that southeast corner, I'm not sure what that is. I just don't know,
Understood.
okay. Thank you.
All right, do we have any other neutral testimony? All right, do we have any opponent testimony?
Yeah.
Come on forward. Just state your name and your address in the microphone, please.
Hello, I'm Jim McDonald with Irish Sales and Service, 181 Southwest Merritt Lane. One thing that just concerns me, and I look to see a person wants to do what they want with their property. It doesn't concern me really with what people want to do, to pay the taxes on it. However, when it comes to the access and right of ways in a jumbled mess like we have around this location, it's been brought to this hearing that the left-hand side of your map there is maintained by the city or county, and it's never been. We've always maintained it for our neighbors. We own the renting yard. And we're happy to do so. But I think the question would come down to is if we annex this in, are we prepared to annex the houses next to it in? And with that being said, the setback from Merritt, when it comes to annexation and sewer hookup and everything else, are we sure that we can actually absorb those eminent domain issues when we absorb those into the city? Moving forward to the west or east as well, there's a lateral, as you can see in the lower portions kind of covered up in that map. There is a north unit right away that runs diagonal through that property. Is North Unit going to disrupt that right away through there, or are they trying to move it? Obviously, it'd be a concern of whether it got moved onto my property or not, but I think annexation, I'm not sure is the right answer, but as far as doing what you want with the property, that's obviously up to the person that owns it. But as far as easement and access and everything else, it's, I think, the big concern here, and I think if we're to dive down those rabbit hole of deciding how we can get to the property and everything else, I think we'd have to start at the west and move our way to the east in order to really address those in a way that would make sense for their property, our property, and my fellow neighbors.
What is your property?
I own the rectory yard, just to the
It's
east, so it'd be
1700.
tax lot 1700.
1700, okay.
Yeah.
And so your entrance is,
So we have a public right of way through the west. As was spoken to their property, and then we own the rest of Merritt Lane to the east.
so,
I think prior to annexation, we'd have to talk about how Merritt's going to be discussed further. And is the city really ready to absorb the domain issues with us and my other neighbors? Is that something
you're
that,
concerned that their entrance is going to somehow
yeah, I think.
get blurred with yours?
Yes, and my neighbors, you know, like I said, we said that this road was publicly maintained, it's not. And as we hook up city and setback easements to the east, if you scroll, or excuse me, sorry, to the west. As we set up as every other city street in the town, well, tends to be the trend. And what should happen is the town ends up putting sidewalks in that makes the road nicer, and makes our property more valuable by adding more to it, but there's a lot to do to the west of their property and to the east of their property in order to fill that gap. And I just don't know that annexation is the right answer at this point.
Would you not see that the city would really fill that gap if it was annexed into the city?
I would be awfully concerned at this point, and I don't know why they would start now by absorbing that giant burden of putting the road in there and hooking everyone up to sewer when the road's only 12 foot wide at best. You know, the setbacks, there's a pink house just to the west of that property that's practically in the road. You can see the roof line of the green lawn that comes up to Merritt Lane. That house physically have to get probably removed in order to do what we're wanting to do as far as the city goes.
Do you have an answer to that question? No.
Well, generally speaking, we don't make decisions on annexation. For the record, you're not making a decision on the annexation. Question is whether the road's appropriate or not. You've got the applicant has their property's already dedicated half of the required right of way that we need. The properties to the west, we cannot compel them to annex in the city. Excuse me, under very, very limited health conditions could we only compel them, or they were entirely surrounded by the city limits. We call that an island annexation. We don't have that situation here. So it's not as if we can go out and get more right of way. The city likely will not be improving the street to a true city standard with sidewalks and curb and asphalt for many, many, many years. It's only at that time by which that you're going to start to deal with whether the home that Jimmy's identified is either in the right of way, too close to the right of way, or otherwise. But I can tell you, you know, we've built roads and there's structures that are really close to the sidewalk. This is part of the challenge of urbanizing land, right? And it doesn't mean that it's unsafe or inadequate. It just means you have a structure that may be a little closer to the road than you want.
Okay, then I need some clarification. Why are we talking annexation if we're not annexed?
I'm not sure.
How did that come up?
It's because I reported that the applicant signed a consent to annexation.
They just signed consent, but that doesn't mean that the property is being annexed into the city.
Correct.
So if we're moving forward, I've obviously been the consent doesn't mean anything at this point. So then we're just worried about the conditional use of whether a person could put RVs there or not.
Correct.
And so, that being said, will the north unit right away be moved onto someone else's property? Or are we abandoning the idea of the opportunity of a park at that end of town? Which is what the north unit right away was left open for, from what I understand from them. Or are they looking to move it elsewhere? I feel like that's something that we'll definitely want to address as far as moving forward.
North unit was given notice of this proposal. They did not submit comments in the record. I will ask the director to comment on it, but my understanding is that easement is actually through a reclamation easement. It won't be moving. There is a pipe in it. And so
There's no pipe past the back end of the previous 1800 spot. It's been deemed an expansion.
so then it may be an easement without anything in it, and probably the reason they haven't commented on it is because they probably don't have any direct impact.
Like I said, but my concern is just, there's such a jumble mess right ways around here. Making sure that the future moving forward for their lot and my lot continues to have access like we need. I mean, I have access to the east, but not everyone else does.
Completely understand. This is the challenge of it. Not to confuse it, but when we do annexations, not for this property or generally, when we do annexation, this is the challenge, right?
And as far as the easement goes as well, there aren't any permanent structures being built on this building, so if at some time this. The use of this property somehow. Is, North Unit decides to use their rights for the easement. There won't be any permanent structures that would be moved, from my understanding.
That is correct. The applicant is not proposed structures. Therefore, there's no structures proposed in, whether it be an actual easement or former easement or whatever that is shown on there.
And I guess myself, knowing that sometimes people don't always know what's private and public right of ways as we come through this evening. Would a sign, some type of signage on where your road starts, do you feel like that would be helpful for you as far as people not using access through your property towards Adams Road, or do you foresee that being a problem?
I guess it just depends on how it moves forward, we try to limit the amount of through traffic. For one, just to cut down thieving and everything else that goes through in our communities, and since there's residential houses. Including my folks that live on that street, I try to keep that to a minimum.
Okay.
Obviously, we operate a business and there's going to be through traffic, that's not going to be avoidable, but trying to find that healthy balance is definitely difficult.
No, for sure. Okay. Do you guys have any other questions for Jim?
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, do we have any other opponent testimony? Go ahead and come up and state your name and your address in the microphone, please.
Yeah, my name is Mike Ray, Blue Sky Investments. I do a lot of investing in matters, develop property, buy old houses, repair them. I'm doing a project out at the airport. I have a piece of property close to this that is under contract right now. And I heard about this hearing tonight, and I came down to kind of alleviate some of my concerns. I'm always concerned about what I call a carve out. Where you take a small piece of property and kind of carve it out. To net it to the city without a plan for, let's just say all the way to the west. To 97. So. Since I just heard about this today. I'll study it a little more, but I just want to voice a concern about carbon. And I want to study it a little more. Piece of property that I have on contract. Will be developed over a number of years. It's a large piece of property. And I want to make sure that everything matches here. And would work. And I am concerned about the private property versus the actual street. How that would work in the future over the property that I'm developing. So,
Sure, and unfortunately, I can't answer a lot of those questions because we have to stick to what is on the agenda for this evening. But I would encourage if you are looking at updating a property or you have a plan like that, that you meet with Nick to discuss that, to see if there are other things that you need to learn or applications that you need to make before you get too far in that planning. So if you have specific questions about the proposal that's in front of you today, we can answer that, but I can't really comment on things that aren't in the proposal.
right, I understand all this. I mean, I develop property, I know
Yep.
what's going on. I just heard about it today, like I told you. And so I just want to kind of come in and try to figure out what's going on, why just a small carve out?
Perfect. No, I think that's a good question, and as Nick mentioned earlier in the meeting, there will be another public hearing on this because the planning, or the city commission needs, or sorry, the city planning department needs to update a portion of this application to reflect a change in the proposal. So we will announce the date of that hearing to this evening, and I would encourage you to attend that if you have further questions or to meet with Nick in between then, if that makes sense.
Well, it'll be public, so I'll have better chances, I do.
Yep, exactly. So all the information will be available and you can read the agenda and come up and ask questions again as well.
I just wanted to make sure there wasn't a final decision tonight or something, because I just heard about it.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you. Do we have any other testimony? You're making me nervous. Is there anyone online? All right, so applicant, you now have an opportunity to comment on anything that was said during the testimony. So if you would like to come up and say anything, you can, or you can say that you're happy with what is in the record.
Maybe clarifying that.
Can you come up? Sorry. They transcribe the meeting minutes using our microphone, so we're kind of thinking about it.
I'm Christy Saulsbury, the owner of the piece of property, and I think that clarifying, Nick clarifying and Jimmy clarifying, this isn't an annexation hearing or proposal. It's just a, we signed a consent. I think that may have cleared up a lot of concern at this point, so I think we're good with where we're at. Yeah,
Great, thank you.
thank you.
Okay, so staff, do you have anything to add at this point?
Nothing to add, staff's gonna recommend that the planning commission not take action on this matter. The only action that we would recommend you take is to continue the hearing to a date time certain. And the basis for that just be abundantly clear would be that we do need to issue a new recommended findings and decision for you with the appropriate criteria in there. It may change the conditions of approval slightly. But when you're ready to discuss the timing of that, so that you can take the appropriate action, if you'd like.
Okay,
I'm happy.
so do I need a motion from one of the commissioners regarding extending the public hearing?
Yes, so to be a little more precise, formal action is needed from the planning commission, a motion, a second, and unanimous or a majority vote to continue to a date time certain. That motion also needs to include whether you want to allow the record to remain open or not. So what that means is, again, if you've got a question of what that means, a little coaching here, they probably do to the audience does as well. So what that means is when the record is open, you can submit testimony, whether written or even verbal testimony during the next hearing, and accept that and consider it in the decision. The challenge we're going to have is that if you leave the record open until the next hearing date, there may be new evidence that comes in the record that we may not be able to adjust the findings on the fly during the hearing for you to make a decision. So with that speaking, or with that understanding, I'm seeing the need to continue the hearing to Wednesday, November 20th at 6:30 PM. Are you commissioners available on that date and time?
Yes, yes. Yes,
Okay. With that said, I would suggest that the planning commission take formal action to continue the public hearing to November 20th at 6:30 PM here at City Hall. And leave the record open. Allow written testimony to be submitted up until November 13th, so as a week from today. And that you'll also be able to take testimony at the hearing as well.
Okay,
The idea here is we really don't want to limit it, but if you're gonna submit testimony. Staff really wants it by the 13th, so that we can consider that and include it in the staff report and decision. So that the planning commission review and have the public have all that information tied together. and
Wonderful.
available.
okay. Does anyone want to, act on that?
This is, Commissioner Kendall. And I make a motion to continue the meeting to November 20th, 6:30 PM here at City Hall. Leaving it an open for public review. Up until November 13th and an open public hearing on the meeting of the 20th.
this is Commissioner Eder, and I will second that motion.
All right, there is a motion on the floor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Right, motion carries. So just a reminder, that means that this hearing is continued to the 20th. The public record for written testimony is available until the 13th. So if you have comments that you would like to be included in the packet, please email Nick or contact him. Also, if you would like to submit any testimony, we will hear all proponent, opponent, and neutral testimony at the next hearing as well. Applicant, we would also like one of you to be here to provide applicant testimony as well. All right, so that hearing is continued. Nick, do you have any other additional items on our agenda?
I'm trying to recall, I believe we've got business for the planning commission on December 4th.
December 4th?
Your first regular scheduled meeting in December.
Okay,
So if you could just hold that open, please.
yep. Okay,
And
I will be here on December 4th, just so you know, I'll
Okay.
be in Chicago for a trade show.
Commissioner Reynolds, are you available on the 4th?
I can go back.
You can get out of timeout.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else?
I don't think so. Any questions, comments for staff?
No, so November 20th here,
Yes, November 20th. Yes.
meeting is adjourned at, sorry, my old eyes are like, I think that's 7:47.
You got it.
Good enough.
So if I understand that the meeting will be November 20th, it's 6:30, like today's meeting was supposed to be